Oregon could be ready for a recruiting heater.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Messiah Hampton film breakdown with Brian, that's on today's show. Spencer Scale of Agreement, that's on today's show. So it's going to be fun, and it's brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So Oregon has been rolling in the high-profile visitors over the last couple of weekends. There are 5-star names. There are big-time 4-star names. Devon Benjamin was on campus not long ago, who Roman Tomashoff of Locked On Huskies mentioned yesterday. Brandon Arrington is committing on Friday. Ryder Lyons was on campus recently. He's going to visit BYU this weekend, who's probably, I would guess, the biggest threat to Oregon going after the highest uncommitted quarterback in the class of 2026 right now. The LDS connection is a very, very real thing that Oregon will have to contend with, because that's a pitch BYU can make and nobody else can. But in recruiting, you go out and if you figure out any way that you can stand out to a recruit, Oregon is certainly well aware of how to do that. But with Brandon Arrington committing on Friday and Lyons floating around out there and a crystal ball in for Jhett Washington, who's a 5-star safety, I can't see a world where Oregon misses on all of those guys. If they go 0 for 3, boy, would I be in a bummer of a mood here on the show. And I don't expect that to be the case. And those aren't even all the 5-stars. So I asked this to my Locked On Ducks insider crowd yesterday and got an almost alarmingly consistent response across the board. Oregon has one 5-star committed in the class of 2026 right now. It's Kendre Harrison, the 5-star tight end, who may also play basketball for the Ducks. I don't know how that will work schedule-wise, but dude is an absolute stud of an athlete. And obviously, Oregon tries to go out and get as many of those guys as they can. They've had some high-profile misses with Jared Curtis and Jackson Cantwell. That's not going to stop them from going big game hunting. How many 5-stars do you think Oregon winds up with in the class of 2026? Almost across the board. My Locked On Ducks insider crowd said 4. 4 to 5. I think that's incredibly reasonable. I think you all must get your Duck information from the most logically well-reasoned people on planet Earth, because I think that is a really, really appropriate prediction. Oregon's not going to get all of these. Of course, you never do, never have, never will, but this question came in from Mason for Spencer's Scale of Agreement, which is so back and never going away on the show. I don't think it'll go away during the season. I don't know why it would. I can't wait for seasoned Spencer Scale of Agreement takes. I'm excited about it already, though summer is really fun, so I'm not trying to rush through that necessarily. But Mason sent this one in. Spencer Scale of Agreement. Oregon lands all of Richard Wesley, Jhett Washington, and Ryder Lyons in the next month. In the next month. Now, the part of this I had to think about was, are all these guys even going to have committed within the next month? We don't know. None of those guys have an official commitment date listed that I have seen. Typically, though, those names come off the board in official visit season. I'll never forget here on the show back in 2023 when Oregon, or it would have been 22 maybe, recruiting 20, whatever class Nico came out in that also had Dante Moore in that kind of infamous 2023 high school recruiting class for quarterbacks where everybody's not where they committed to, except for Arch Manning, of course. Oregon went from Nico Iamaleava to Jaden Rashada to Dante Moore all over the summer months as they pursued a highly rated quarterback in that class. That all unfolded within, I'd say, about a 5-6 week span. So let me give two different scales of agreement here. that all of them have committed within the next month. Because none of them have listed a date, I'm going to go with a 3. That Oregon lands all 3 of them. 7. I'm putting a 7 on that one. Now, this is me feeling a little bold, feeling a little bit dangerous, dare I say, with what some would call the announcer's jinx. However, Oregon is in a really good position for all of these guys. And Richard Wesley, of course, had the cannonball video and decommitted, but didn't decommit 17 days after that got posted. I have long said here on the show, I think he winds up at Oregon. Jhett Washington's got the crystal ball from Steve Wiltfong over at On3. He's not right 100% of the time. He is right more than he is wrong. And then Ryder Lyons is the one that I think Oregon, of the 3, will have the toughest time landing because of the number of high-caliber recruiting schools they're going up against. There are still crystal balls logged over at 24/7 Sports for Ryder Lyons to go to USC. I mentioned the LDS connection at BYU. Maybe, Michigan surprises people and gets into the fold there. But I think that Oregon winds up with at least 2 of those guys. And then you consider that Brandon Arrington's committing on Friday. I have heard good things. That does not guarantee a single thing. No one's ever taken a bad visit, remember, but all these visits have happened for the Ducks and it's gone well. I don't know what to make of, Arrington moving up his commitment timeline from July 5th to June 19th, other than he probably got some clarity and maybe the USC visit didn't go as well. I've never heard anyone say something like that publicly, but I thought USC would be more in the fold for a 5-star in the state of California. Lo and behold, it's down to Oregon and Texas A&M. So he commits not on Friday, sorry. He commits on Thursday, June 19th. I will talk about him one way or the other on Friday. But I think between him, Wesley, Washington, and Lyons, you've got 4 4-stars there. I think Oregon lands at least 2. I feel pretty solid saying that they're in a really good spot to get 3. So I'll put a 7 on that. That is more confident than I'd be, but based on what I've read, based on what I've been told, I feel good about where Oregon's at with those players. So Dennis sent this one in. Spencer Mack, I haven't been called that since Little League. I've not, but you free to call me. That's totally fine. That's just an opposing Little League coach, which is, of course, a dad. He was awesome. Gave me that nickname, and I haven't heard it in a long time. So thank you for that, Dennis. Scale of agreement assessment. I think an incoming Oregon recruit will earn starting time by phenomenal play early in the season. That player will then go on to be a dark horse Heisman candidate. All right. 1.5. 1.5. This could only apply to Decorian Moore. He is the only incoming true freshman. I presume you're talking about the class of 2025. He's the only guy that has a shot. And he would have to have... Jeremiah Smith wasn't even a Heisman finalist last year. So, but dark horse Heisman candidate. You didn't say Heisman finalist. That's the only reason this is a 1.5 and not a 1. So, I will have higher grades for Spencer's scale of agreement later on today's show. I respect the boldness. Dennis. I really do. But... I put that question in the first segment of today's show as a reminder. Playing as a true freshman, incredibly hard. Especially at a place like Oregon. I've heard that get thrown around before. Dan Landy doesn't play enough true freshmen. No, they never play at Oregon. They don't see the field. I mean, first of all, that's not true. And second of all, that's because they recruit these guys every single year. It's hard to see the field when you got as much talent as Oregon does. So, how many 5-stars do you think Oregon's going to land? Do you think Brandon Arrington will commit? That's a simple yes or no prediction. Drop all that in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. All of that good stuff. Oregon's latest commitment, a guy I like a lot, Messiah Hampton. Brian likes one of my comparisons a lot. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. All-in-one convenience is what they are all about. Instead of juggling multiple apps to do this, that, and the other thing all over the place, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. Oregon's latest commit is four-star wide receiver Messiah Hampton, recruiting analyst and host of the Portal podcast, Brian Smith, here to discuss. You're my go-to film guy, Brian. I watch film. I have thoughts and reactions, but I'll give you benefit of the doubt on being better at that than me, seeing as how you've got a couple of decades. Just give me some time. Give me some time hosting my two shows. I'll get there one day, maybe, possibly. But what do you like about one of the 10 best wide receivers in the class of 2026 who is pledged to Oregon?
Well, number one, I've seen him live a couple of times, and that really helps. This kid has a very polished game for a high school kid, especially for an upstate New York kid. So random, but he loves it. He will literally go out and do drills in the snow in upstate New York and send out the film. That is the definition of dedication. I don't know anybody else to do that, but good for him. And he's a kid's got great hands. He's got really, really good route running in the intermediate area. Like most kids, either they run go balls or screens when they're young. He's been coached by somebody that knew what they were doing. So this is a guy that can play a lot earlier than what most wide receivers, even like at Oregon, which obviously they don't have any problem getting receiver talent. I think he'll play by his sophomore year. If he played as a freshman, someone was in the rotation, wouldn't surprise me.
What do you think his upward ceiling is based on what you know about him right now? Because I've looked at him and compared him to a couple of Ducks receivers in the past. I had one person say that his film reminds him of Trayshawn Holden, who was at Alabama and then played at Oregon the last couple of years. I didn't hate that comparison. They have a similar-ish kind of frame. I think Holden's maybe a little bit taller, but what do you see as kind of his utmost potential as a college football player?
He's the guy that will be your volume receiver. He is somebody that will maybe lead them in receptions, but not necessarily yards per catch, but he will be your money player. He's the third down, annoying wide receiver that will learn every position, that will be in the slot on one play, run jet motion on another, running back, whatever they have to do, and he'll be the guy that won't drop any passes. So he may not be a first-round pick. Just depends, like all that stuff, track times and all that. We'll see what he ends up running. But I bet you he's a guy that catches over 100 balls at Oregon. So you'll obviously take that. So.
Right? Yes, absolutely. Is there a trait about him that stands out more than the others, or that's helped him get identified on the recruiting circuit as one of the top 10 at his position in the class of 2026?
Route running's up there, but probably eye discipline. Even the elite kids, like Cedarian Morgan's a kid I know well. I live in Alabama. He's national top 25 kid, 6'5", 215. If Cedarian had the eye discipline and the route running that Messiah Hampton did, he'd be the number one player in the country. So Messiah just doesn't drop the ball. Over the shoulder, out route, screen, anything he does, it's out in front of him. He projects everything. He tucks away. Everything is crisp. It's what a wide receiver coach wants to see out of a high school kid. And again, it's just so random because he's from upstate New York. But as they say, you go where the talent is. In Oregon, nobody does it quite like the Ducks when it comes to finding talent all around the United States.
Yeah, 6'1", 180 pounds, 180, 190 is what he's listed at right now. Right. I also had the thought of Emeka Egbuka at Ohio State when I saw him.
Great comparison.
Like just everything that when I've watched Egbuka over the last couple of years, especially last season, he's just kind of good at everything. Like he's not a specialty receiver in that he's a deep threat guy, or he's a screen guy, or he's a short route runner like Tez Johnson was, and a merchant just cooking you over the middle. Like he's just good at everything. He's not necessarily like the best at one particular thing in the class, but he's just good at everything across the board. Is this someone who you think plays at a weight under 200 pounds, or do you think he could bulk up a little, still keep his speed, and just be one of those physical, big-bodied sort of guys?
I would think that's a pretty good way to put it. 195, 200, is fine. Route running, I know it's not the same level of production, but his style, and I say this because I'm from Indiana, I'm a Colts fan, Reggie Wayne would be another style. Reggie was fast, but he wasn't 4.3. But Reggie, in and out of his breaks, nobody stayed with him. That's why he's one of the greatest players of all time. That's the style that Messiah Hampton would be. So I think that he can play at 195, 200 pounds. He'll be your guy in the red zone and on third down that you don't want to be one-on-one with. It's really hard. If you don't get hands on him at the line, he's going to be a handful in other ways.
Yeah, Chase Cota is another name that comes to mind. Like fast, but not the fastest. Big, but not the biggest. Solid, well, just solid across the board. So I enjoy hearing all of that, and I think playing for him as a true freshman is going to be tough at Oregon. I really do.
Got depth.
Because we also have to remember Gatlin Bear, the 5-star from 2024. He's coming in for the class of 2026. You add on him on top of Jurion Dickey, DeCorian Moore will be back, Jeremiah McClellan's in there. And then we don't know about Evan Stewart. And one of my listeners wanted me to ask you about this, and I wanted your thoughts as well. The interesting conundrum Evan Stewart has in front of him is pretty varied in that he's got an injury, likely out for the entire season, could easily come back, doesn't have to come back. He could just go to the NFL draft, but he could come back to Oregon. He could also transfer somewhere, but I can't see him having any issue getting another year of eligibility given that he won't play a single snap of college football this year. So in your experience in the scouting community, what happens when a guy who was projected to be probably a second or third, maybe fourth round pick, but probably a second or third round pick at wide receiver, if he doesn't play a single snap this year, which is my personal expectation, is there any chance he still winds up going to the NFL draft in your view, or does he need to come back and play another season if he wants to get drafted?
Unless he's going to run sub 4.3 or at least sub 4.4, it would not be advisable. Production matters at that spot, especially with the NFL being a high volume passing league. Durability, I mean, this saying's been around forever. Your best ability is your
availability.
Yeah, there it is. So if you do not come back, is that a good idea? Plus, I'll just say it. You're going to get compensated at Oregon, unlike most programs. So why would you risk that when you could make $1 million at Oregon? I don't want to say they're going to just take him in slow, but like he's not going to be forced into anything. He's got over a year until he'd play again. I can't see why you wouldn't take that option. Now, 10 years ago, it'd be a different situation. You might leave because it's not the same deal with the players get paid. But I don't think that that's going to be the way he'll go. I bet he comes back. And he's a really competitive kid. He'll probably want to prove that he's capable of going out and making a big noise too. So maybe I'm wrong, but coming off that injury, do we really think he's going to run a 4.36 or something? Probably not. That's hard. Like it's just the leg training for receivers and stuff and all that stuff. And all the time that he's missed on, like there are people that do nothing but train for the 40. Like that's who they just train guys for that. He's not going to be able to do a lot of that stuff for a while. That's rough too. So I imagine he will be a Duck in 2026.
I think it's more likely than not he plays college football. Whether or not that's with the Ducks,
that's also a good question.
It is absolutely on the table, no doubt, and I would very much like to have him back. Oregon's going to go through an entire season with a really young, inexperienced receiving core, and guys are going to grow into their roles in the offense and fully develop into whatever slot they fit into on the wide receiver depth chart. And then you're going to go through spring ball, and Evan Stewart will maybe be there for that. But you could go through an entire season and spring ball, not have him there. I would absolutely love to have him back. I do wonder, though, where he would slot in on the depth chart.
Which spot does he play, too?
I mean, because think about this. If DeCorian Moore, really starts to figure it out at the second half of this year, is Evan Stewart locked into being a top 2 or 3 wide receiver with the Ducks next season? I don't think he would be. DeCorian would probably be ahead of him because he's healthy and already has a year under his belt with Dante Moore at quarterback, and somebody else could be in that role, whether it's Jurion Dickey or Jeremiah McLaughlin. I don't know. That is going to be a regular offseason topic on this show once the 2025 season comes to a close. Brian Smith. Yes. Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst, Portal Podcast. Great, as always. Spencer's scale of agreement is so unbelievably back. All right. I think we'll get above a 1.5 for these Spencer scale of agreement takes. But here's how you get onto the show. You submit a YouTube comment. Go into Twitter, shoot me a DM, become a Locked On Ducks insider. You get priority mailbag access and a bunch of other perks as well. You submit a take, hot, cold, or Goldilocks just right, and I give you 1 to 10, occasionally a 0, but that's only happened maybe once or twice. It'd have to be pretty out there for me to give a 0. But I give you a 1 to 10, and we keep rolling along because these have been fun. So, got this question from an insider, so he'll get to go first. Bear Alexander will lead Oregon in sacks this year. Oh, my goodness. I love where your head's at. Bear Alexander is one of the most interesting players on this Oregon roster because he's one of the biggest wild cards who's also playing a massive position of need. Oregon lost Derek Harmon and Jamari Caldwell, first and third round picks respectively. Now, I am indeed the self-appointed chair of the Amari Washington fan club. However, a huge reason that last year I gassed up the defensive line correctly to be the best that Oregon has had in a decade is that they had 2 studs on the interior, not just 1. When you can line up and have quality players across the board and not have any weaknesses, well, suddenly that's a predicament for opposing offensive coordinators and offensive line coaches. Who do we double team? Who do we leave in one-on-one situations? Now, I don't think Bear or Amari Washington, as much as I like him, can be expected to produce like Derek Harmon did last year. It's just that guy. I think he's the best interior defensive lineman Oregon's had since Eric Armstead. I don't count DeForest Buckner as an interior guy, even though he played there. But if I were to put together an all-century Oregon defense, Harmon's probably on it. That's tough. Because your interior would probably be some mixture of Eric Armstead, Derek Harmon, and Haloti. Haloti Ngata has to be on it. That's not a question. Not a question. Harmon was a dominant interior defensive lineman. He did not lead Oregon in sacks, nor did he come close. His combination of speed and power allowed him to impact the game in so many ways. He had 5 sacks last year. 5. Mateo had 10.5. That led the Big Ten and, of course, led Oregon's team. So the reason that I'm going to put a 2 on this, higher than 1.5. The reason I'm putting a 2 on this one that Alexander will lead Oregon in sacks this year is twofold. Number one, I cannot possibly expect him to be as good or better than Derek Harmon. That's not a reasonable expectation for a guy who has shown glimpses but hasn't reached his full potential. If he does, he's going to be a force. No doubt about it. He does not play a position that is prone to racking up sacks or really just stats in general. Interior defensive lineman, you do a lot of grunt work. You don't get a lot of credit, but the importance cannot be overstated. It just doesn't always show up in the box score. And if Derek Harmon has 5 sacks, I'd be surprised. If Bear Alexander gets 5 sacks this year, Oregon's defensive line room, or the coaches, Tony Tuioti and Tosh Lupoy, Dan Lanning, everybody on that staff deserves mountains of credit for something I talked about in yesterday's show, the development of a transfer portal player. That would be an awesome number for him to get to. Sacks just lend themselves more to go to players coming off the edge. A take that I would have a higher rating on, not a high rating on, but a higher rating on is Tatum Tuioti leads Oregon in sacks this year. I think it'll be Mateo. Hot take, I know, scorching hot take from Spencer here, but I like Bear Alexander. I do. I think that he can be way more than what he's shown so far. I don't know exactly why he, essentially jumped ship in the middle of the season at USC, other than because they actually hired a real defense coordinator. I don't know what happened there behind the scenes, but he's got plenty of potential. If he realizes it, he'll be really good. But will he get 10 to 12 sacks? That'd be some Aaron Donald stuff, and never going to expect that. So, yeah, two on that one. Dylan sends this one in. Spencer scale of agreement. By the end of the season, this should be the best secondary Lanning has had, mainly due to extreme safety flaws in past years. Not going to argue with you there. And lots of high upside guys who will develop and shine early in the season. Yeah, this depends on how quickly the young guys take over in the secondary. We know Thieneman's going to start. That's about all we know. My guess is that you've got Ife Obadegwu, who will be a redshirt freshman starting at one corner, and Jaleel Florence at the other, coming off an injury. I thought Jaleel looked really good in the spring game, so I know he's a starting caliber player. Back in 2023, before he got hurt, he was starting opposite the late Kyrie Jackson, RIP forever and always. And I don't know. I mean, if Oregon's got a guy in the room that can just bump Jaleel down to a backup role, because he does look fully healthy, and by all accounts he is fully healthy, that means there's some special stuff brewing though. So the question, and I've talked about this with the secondary before, is how quickly does the transition happen? Do the young guys go does Iffy start right away? Or does Thron Johnson start for the first couple weeks if he gets more up to speed as a number 2 guy on the depth chart, and then he's starting by game 7 or 8? That sort of depends. I think I'm putting a 4 on this one. The safety play can easily be the best Oregon has had in the Dan Lanning era. I mean, Thieneman alone might make that the case, just because he's not only not a liability in certain areas, but he can be an impact player, an all-conference caliber player. Oregon hasn't had that as safety. They just have it. Evan Williams is the closest thing. He was good, but it also comes down to who's starting opposite Dylan Thieneman. Is it Kingston Lopa? I'd be intrigued. And I think Lopa and Thieneman, that is Lopa's not super experienced, but really interesting physical prospect. You put him out there next to a veteran like Thieneman, let him kind of run the show. I think I'll put a 4. I'll put a 4 on that. More or less likely to happen than it is likely in my view by a little bit, just because they do have some veterans in there, and I wonder if they don't get the benefit of the doubt early, and then you kind of have to wait and see which young guys can push them out of their starting spots. So, wrap with this. Hallow Throttle said, question, maybe you just choose to ignore it. No, I would never ignore your question. I invite anyone to put the following Oregon quarterbacks in order and offer an opinion as to where they think Dante Moore will fall in comparison to where they feel with where Dylan Gabriel fell. Marcus Mariota, Joey Harrington, Justin Herbert, Bo Nix, Darren Thomas, Dennis Dixon, Vernon Adams. So, if I'm ranking those quarterbacks and putting Dylan Gabriel in there, I'm going Mariota 1 for me. Bo Nix 2, Joey Harrington 3, Dennis Dixon 4, Justin Herbert 5, Darren Thomas 6. I'll go Dylan Gabriel 6, Darren Thomas 7. I love Darren Thomas. Gabriel was a better statistical quarterback, different offensive systems, but not that different necessarily. But and I love Vernon Adams, so I'd put Vernon Adams lowest on that list, but that's just because it's a ridiculously impressive list. There's no bad I loved VA. He also played a lot of, kind of backyard football in a lot of ways, but that was really fun. So yeah, I'd have that'd be my order of Oregon quarterbacks. Where can Dante Moore go? I don't think he can get above Mariota. I don't think he can get above Bo Nix. And that's it. That's the ceiling on this guy. is that I could look at the end of his career and say, that's the third best quarterback I've ever seen at Oregon. I didn't watch Joey Arrington live. I was too young to, see his career, but I know how great Joey Arrington was. I put him third on my list for a reason. But Dante Moore's ceiling as a quarterback, as a talent and as a passer is so immense. And if he does well this year and comes back for 2026, you will hear me gas him up like I haven't for an Oregon quarterback. Well, I guess since Bo Nix's second year. I knew Bo was going to be really good in 2023, and he was. If Oregon wins that Pac-12 title game, Bo Nix wins the Heisman. That'll be where Dante Moore is at in 26. If he starts this year, does well, stays healthy, receiving core comes back intact, offensive line remains in good shape, it'll be different. But if they put together a good unit for 26, Dante Moore, I think, could be the third best Oregon quarterback of all time. Let me know what you guys think. You know how to get in touch with me. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.